Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting, the show that hates kids.
That's not true.
No, I'm just joking.
I love kids.
Some people will. You
Tastes
do.
like
Yeah.
chicken.
Yeah.
What?
What? Hello.
Worst
Thank you.
joke ever.
Okay, reset. Is this on? Are we live? Ian, you mentioned earlier in the show how great your cigar was with your morning coffee.
Oh, it was so good.
You
so good.
really loved the
Yeah,
pairing.
oh, man.
Well, Cigar Aficionado has released a list, and I enjoy
Right now.
I enjoy going through their list. 10 great cigars to pair with your morning coffee, which would have been much better if they'd said 10 great cigars to pair with your morning coffee.
The right now.
Right now.
The right now joke is because everything is clickbait. It's like,
Yeah,
so-and-so,
right.
blah, 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 right now.
Click here before these cigars go away.
That's right.
Yeah. Cup of coffee for a lot of people is a morning ritual, and people who are big cigar fans, obviously, if you've got the time, can really enjoy having a smoke with that cup of Morning Joe. So, Cigar Aficionado recommends some good pairings here.
I see that first picture.
You see the first one, you know
I
this
agree.
is the Oliva Serie V or Serie 5 Melanio Robusto.
Oh.
It is that's a great cigar to
great
begin
cigar,
with.
yeah.
It's a great cigar to begin with. But they're saying it pairs really, really well as a perfect partner for a cup of coffee. They say ideally one brewed from Sumatra beans. I don't know if you can find Sumatra bean in your Keurig.
I don't know if I'd
cup.
be able to tell the difference. Like, I'm not that much of a coffee aficionado.
Now, I will say this next cigar, if you can't pair it with a cup of coffee, just forget about the coffee because the cigar is so good. It's the Padron 1964 Anniversary Series Exclusivo. You can pair the cigar with pretty much anything.
Yeah.
You know? But they say it's a perfect balance for that first cigar of the day if you're like really independently wealthy. No, it didn't say that, but I'll say that.
That's the one I smoke in the morning.
Yeah. Exclusivo, they say, is one of the best in the line with the traditional full lush Padron draw. It is a fine partner for your morning cup. Then we segue to the Arturo Fuente Rosado, the sun-grown Magnamar Vitola 44. This is Fuente has so many blends, and they all look very similar. Like, they don't do a lot of crazy different packaging other than the Opus X and that line, but like when you're just dealing with the basic Fuente line, they all look really similar, but they're not necessarily, and it really bears trying. I do recommend the Rosado Sun-Grown Magnamar. The Monte Cristo White, Monte Cristo Quart. I gave one of these to Adam for his birthday.
I just recently had a couple of those. They're great.
It's an elegant Connecticut seed wrapper grown in Ecuador that wraps this cigar, and they say it takes about the same amount of time to smoke as it does to finish sipping a nicely brewed cup of coffee. So,
there's one that I had just recently too.
The A.J. Fernandez New World Connecticut Robusto. Now, the Connecticut obviously is a bit lighter. A.J. stuff has a tendency to be medium to full. The Connecticut's a bit lighter, which has a Connecticut shade wrapper. And the cigar starts off, they say, kind of fruity before it takes on a very delicate combination of ceder, leather, and lemon peel that works really well with coffee.
I want to point out something about the Connecticut thing. A lot of companies are kind of reviving Connecticut's. Not that they ever really went out of style, but
they're a big seller. But they're
a lot of experienced smokers kind of don't smoke Connecticut's because they tend to be less flavorful. But I think there's a whole movement right now of making Connecticut's that are nice and flavorful and good. I mean, the Aladino Connecticut is top of the rock when it comes to that right now.
Absolutely.
There's been some really, really good ones coming out. I just wanted that New World Connecticut so good.
I'm going to do my best to pronounce this one correctly. The Tatuaje Negociant, Negociant.
Negociant.
I'm going to go with Negociant, but I'm sure that's wrong. It's the Negociant Monopole No. 2. They say the name of this smoke, if I could pronounce it correctly, would tempt you to pair it with a fine wine. Negociant is the French term for a wine merchant who assembles the produce of smaller growers and winemakers and sells it.
If it's French,
under his
I think
own
you
name.
only pronounce the first three letters. And And then you don't pronounce
and then you don't
else.
pronounce anything else. Yeah. Nico, I surrender. Anyway, it's topped with an Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper. It's toasty and nutty, they say, hints of spice, and a lovely orange peel finish. So that does sound like
That sounds delicious. Yeah,
really well with coffee.
Is that a Magic Toast?
The Alec Bradley Magic Toast Toro.
What a great cigar!
Yep. It said, they say, given its name, you'd be forgiven if you thought the Magic Toast tasted like, well, toast. But bread wasn't the inspiration, but rather a night in a tobacco field that spurred Alan Rubin's imagination. He is the guy that blended this. It blends heavy on Honduran tobacco, and it is one of those things that just goes really well with an espresso or other coffee-based drinks. The Don Pepin Garcia Original Invictus. Which is the one with the blue. It's got the little blue
Seen it, hadn't
foot
tried
wrapper.
it.
Yeah, it's Don Pepin Garcia, My Father's Cigars. This is their classic line, and they say notes of bright toast and rich cocoa sweetness make it ideal for coffee. I'm not familiar with this next cigar. It's the La Colmena Amado number 44, but it's from Warped Cigars, and it's their most traditional Cuban-style blend. They say it's a perfect partner for espresso. And finally, the Cuban Monte Cristo Petit number 2. Yeah, if you've got one of these and you can smoke it with your morning coffee, invite me over.
Yeah, well, that's the shortest Monte Cristo I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, it is the Petite number 2, and the Cubans in particular, there's not a lot of really short Cuban cigars. You can get some Robustos, but there's not a lot of the Monte Cristos that are short. So anyway, there's your list of your cigars that are great with your morning coffee.
Right now.
Yeah, I think we may have beaten that horse pretty solidly, don't you think? Okay.
An inhumane way to say it.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. You're right. That was bad. That was bad. I apologize. And what is it? There's a Larry the Cable Guy special where every time he says something that he thinks is over the line, he says, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Lord. Bless the pygmies in Africa," or something like that. Which is, you would have to have grown up in church for that to be funny, but I did, and that's funny. So, all right. So Glengasa. Can we get Mr. Twirlygig on the bottle over there? Glengasa Revival
around right now.
So here's the thing about
here's the label.
Yeah. So here's the thing about this this whiskey. The Revival bottling is the first whiskey to be made by the recently reopened Glengasa Distillery. It was closed in 1986, and I don't know what you may remember about that particular period of time, but it was not a huge time for whiskey. The whiskey revival happened a few years after that. So in 1986, I don't know, maybe slumping sales, maybe other financial issues, the distillery was closed, and it was reopened and resumed production in 2008. This bottle is the first whiskey that they made starting in 2008, but it's just now aged enough that they're releasing it. It's pretty hard to find, and we want to give props and thanks to our buddy Keegan, who works here in the office, who is the guy who actually brought this bottle in and offered us an opportunity to taste it on the show, because he's a wonderful human being. Absolutely,
and this is one of the issues with starting up whiskey. You know, a lot of people, they look at age statements as a statement of quality a lot of times. You know, it's like, how good is this? How old is it? They kind of equate to each other. And it's not
particularly with single malt scotch.
Right, and especially with scotch. Like, you know, where almost everything is at least 10 years old or 12 years old, okay? So here's the problem with firing up a business like that. What's your business plan? Are you going to make money?
What's your business plan for years 1 through 7?
Yeah.
You know, exactly.
Are you going to make money in the first 3 years?
No.
Are you going to catch up in the next 2 years?
No.
When, like, you're going to make stuff?
Yeah.
And then
that you can't
not
even
release
sell
it for 10 years?
For 10 years, yeah, exactly.
I mean, because that's the problem,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And that's why, so if you have a local distillery in your town that just opened up, okay, that's why they're selling a lot of times gin and vodka.
Well, that's right.
And other expressions that don't need the age statement a lot of times.
Or it's why they'll do, blended whiskeys, which they'll source from other places.
Right, if they want something a little higher end.
I'll give you a perfect example. Out of Fort Worth, Texas, TX whiskey, which I have tried, and I think it's quite tasty.
It's good, yeah.
Yeah, quite tasty, and not exorbitantly priced. But they opened their distillery, and instead of waiting, to put something on the market, they started sourcing their whiskey from a different place, blending it into the first expressions of TX. By the way, they were recently purchased for a huge amount of money. These guys are going to go home and, they're going to do that thing. What was
They're
it?
going to retire.
What was it? Scrooge McDuck used to just go into his money vault and just lounge around. Remember that?
He said Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck, yeah. But that's what they're going to be able to do because they got paid big time because they managed to make the brand name mean something to consumers, and they managed to sell a lot of their blended whiskey. I don't think any of their own distillate has reached the shelves yet.
That's pretty amazing to consider that if you're doing that with a blended whiskey. So there's two models.
In Scotland, it's different, by the way.
You can either wait for the 10 years, but how do you pay your employees? How do you what is your business plan at that point? That's tough, and I don't know how you manage it. Or you can sell, like you said, something blended in the meantime, or you're using your distillate to sell, make gin or things that take way less.
But again,
age.
you don't hear about a lot of that in the Scottish Highlands.
That's right, because you literally have to wait that long. So how tough is that to that's why you don't see a lot of new Scotch distilleries.
That's right, because they have been in business for, most of them, decades.
Right.
Decades in order to be at the place. I mean, you look at something like Glenfiddich or Glenmorangie. These guys have been doing it for how long? Hundreds of years?
Hundreds, yeah.
So you're talking about... they've had time to let the whiskey age. So with Glenglassaugh, this has aged, I guess, about 10 years, would be my guess.
It's so friendly.
Friendly?
Friendly.
Does it walk right up and give you a whiskey hug?
It does. It's so vanilla and
ooh, I like this.
Yeah, it's what's the other thing I'm tasting in there? There's kind of a real warm.
Is there a little bit of cinnamon in there?
Maybe, yeah. It's
with the vanilla.
This has so many things going on, and it's all gentle and friendly. This might be the friendliest, gentlest whiskey ever.
The crazy thing about it is it's only about a $38 bottle.
Glenglassaugh Revival is a
to
distinct
find.
Highland malt Scotch whiskey produced using the finest ingredients, bottled without the use of added coloring and without chill filtration. Robust in style, sweet and fruity. I would go with that, yes. Whilst rounded and creamy. Rounded is so malty round.
You know what it is, Ian? It's caramel.
Is that what it is?
That was the flavor we were trying to place.
It's a very burnt kind of caramel.
It's a burnt caramel, yes, and it blends with the vanilla, but in such a delicate kind of a way.
Oh man, I want to wear this like cologne. This is this is good. And then it says, what does
whiskey
it say?
as cologne works really, really well up until the traffic stop.
It says sherry notes and a slight hint of sea air. There is a little saltiness to it.
So these were finished in for 6 months in first fill sherry with first fill sherry butts like the staves, and this is also they were matured in a mixture of first use and refill bourbon casks.
Huh.
So kind of hard to figure out the science there. I'm sure somebody did. But okay, this will be first use, and then after first use, it goes to the refilled, and then after that, it goes to the Orloso sherry.
It's interesting to me because I love sherry cask finish. This does not have a ton of sherry cask finish. When you mention it, I feel like there might be some influence that I'm tasting.
Well, you can get it on the nose, though.
Yes, and you're right that whole caramel, that burnt caramel kind of flavor going through, that's obviously the whiskey cask influence. And what's amazing about it, though, when it said a hint of sea air, I really get a lot of these. You hear me talk about a mineral finish, like a mineral taste in the finish,
and this has got that as well,
like a mineral water. To me, the mineral is there a little bit, but it really has a little slight saltiness to it that I absolutely adore. It's like getting a dark chocolate with just a tiny, tiny snippet of salt in there.
You know what it makes me think of? And to a lot of people, this isn't pleasant, But sometimes when you visit, particularly up like in the northeast of the U.S., and I'm sure this is probably true in Europe as well, when you visit their beach communities, I'm sorry, not beach communities, they're oceanfront communities. They're not beach communities. It's not that tropical vibe like you get in the islands or in Florida. Instead, the beaches are rocky and sandy, and there's this certain sea salt fragrance smell in the air. That's what this reminds me of. I actually find that pleasant, but a lot of people don't like it.
Right, the humidity itself has a saltiness to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
and you can just smell it just walking outside, particularly on like a foggy morning.
I love when you're driving towards the ocean, and you get like what you're saying is a little different, but even going towards Galveston, when you get within a certain amount of miles of Galveston, if your window's open in your car, you smell it.
Absolutely.
Now, that being said, depending on which way the wind's blowing, because there's a little bit of swamp right before you get to Galveston, and that can be a little stinky. But
well, and remember, in Galveston, any medical waste that washes up on the beach is yours to keep.
That is true.
That's it's another plus about. No, we love Galveston. We do. We just wish we had a prettier beach close to home here. But,
by the Coastal Conservation.
Yes, that's right. And they're a sponsor, by the way, for this segment of Smoking and Toasting. Yeah, I know.
No, this is really good. It has.
I like it a lot. Actually,
I would say this:
salted caramel.
If you love salted caramel, this right here has a great just aftertaste of that. That really is fun.
Bigelow's,
I've had that same kind of flavor too in a salted caramel ice cream.
Bigelow's has a salted caramel tea, and this reminds me of it just a little bit.
Nice,
just that wonderful
and,
flavor.
And here's the thing: is this doesn't have a huge sweetness to it. It
doesn't.
And you said tea; it has almost more of a tea kind of like.
Well, that's that minerality.
Sweetness. Yeah, and the minerality. This is good. This is interesting.
The Glenglassaugh.
This one right here is one that I would call definitely a conversation starter.
Oh yes, absolutely. Because it's not like it's just that's a really nice whiskey and you drink it down. This is one you want to talk about and go, what are you getting here? So yes, absolutely. Just like a perfect bomber of craft beer. Which is the perfect bomber of craft beer is not only delicious, but it's a conversation starter.
Yes, very much.
Right? All right, so speaking of the perfect bomber of craft beer, we may have one of those when we come back for the show because we are going to be trying the Great Basin Brewing. How do we say we want to pronounce it again?
Scytale.
Scytale. It might be Scytale. Who knows? But Scytale 427.
It's called the 427.
It's a barrel-aged Imperial Stout from the fine folks at Great Basin Brewing who need a pronunciation guide on their website. Guys, please. But we will be tasting that, and getting to the heart of the story here is craft beer dying. I will read you some quotes from this article from a very prominent and influential brewer, and we'll see if you agree or disagree. Smoking and Toasting, and we will be right back.